Hi, I'm back. This is part two of Abducticon reading. The last time we were here, my friends, my character Alco has been in a bad accident. He's just gone to the hotel. What is supposed to be happening in the hotel is not there. So, we're carrying on now. We're still Friday. Dave Lorne, the Concom member who had been sent to chase his tail at the airport meeting the elusive guest of honor, finally pulled into the parking lot of the hotel at almost 7:45 on Friday night. The parking lot was packed. He circled for a few hopeless minutes, squinting to see if anyone would be stupid enough to vacate their spot, but most people were already ensconced for the night and were there to stay. Dave was hot and tired and frustrated and irritable and hungry. His day had not gone well. He had managed to miss both lunch and dinner, grabbing something unhealthy and sugary every time his stomach reminded him of how empty it was, and now he wanted something substantial to eat. He knew that if he didn't, he'd wake up at 4 in the morning and attack a packet of salty crisps from the vending machine. He also badly wanted a drink, preferably something strong, and in the company of somebody sympathetic to whom he could unload of the sort of day that he'd had. The prospects of that seemed dim as he inched forward in his clapped-out old Nissan, but then a car only a few spaces ahead of him suddenly came to miraculous life, its white reversing lights blinking on, and then, after an eternity of waiting to see if this was in fact happening, Dave was rewarded by the sight of the car beginning to ease out of its parking spot. He slammed on his indicator just in case anyone else who may have been around got any ideas, and very nearly pulled into the parking space before its prior occupant had fully vacated it. He savored his victory, clutching the steering wheel and closing his eyes after he turned the engine off. After a moment, though, his earlier desires reasserted themselves, and he roused himself, reaching out to the passenger seat to gather up a bulging folder of paperwork, and slipped out of the car, locking it with his remote, and then crossing the lot to where the mother-of-pearl roof arched over the covered driveway at the front entrance of the California resort. It felt like coming to an oasis after an age in the desert. Although Dave was all too aware that there was a convention waiting to be run, and there were all sorts of other duties waiting to ambush him as soon as he stepped aside. Perhaps it was this thought that made him pause just outside the glass doors, turning to look over the curve of the driveway and the sweeping view of the ocean beyond, now just a glitter of stars in the darkening sky, and a slash of moonlight glimmering on water in the distance. A last look at something that still felt like a kind of freedom, a sense that there was still time to escape. He became aware that he was not alone, that someone very still and very silent was standing just a pace or two outside the doors, holding what looked like a computer tablet in one hand, and moving the fingers on the other on the touchscreen with a speed that made Dave's eyes water. At first, he thought that he was just that tired and grumpy, that his own thoughts had slowed down sufficiently for everyone else's thoughts and movements to appear superluminal in comparison. But then slowly it dawned on him that something very strange was going on around him. The view, with the distant islands now no more than a black on black oblivion, had begun to turn slightly vertiginous and made his head swim. He felt just for a moment oddly weightless, as if his feet had literally left the ground and left him hovering an inch above the sidewalk before settling back down solidly on his heels. The horizon began to have a distinctly weird tinge to it, as though it was moving in ways the horizon had no business to be moving, and then stopped offering itself up as a straight line and started to curve downwards, a small but significant slope on the edges, turning into something that niggled at the back of Dave's mind, something that he had seen before in movies. The darkening land and ocean were a long way away and receding, dropping away, dropping down, as if he were taking off vertically. The horizon was not one he was used to seeing while standing on the same planet to which it belonged. He was seeing it. He was seeing a world, not from within its point of view, but observing it from the outside. His ears popped suddenly. A motion drew his eye, and his head swiveled to where the other man was standing, just in time to see something that made his eyes water even more. In the moment that he finally registered the strangeness of his companion, something that he might have been forgiven for skimming over as he approached, since the convention was known for extreme costuming, he tallied up the things that had triggered his weirdness sensor. The stillness, of course, and the speed of the fingerwork, and the odd silvery sheen of the person's very smooth skin. And now, as Dave watched, the way that the creature standing there calmly lifted what had looked like a tablet computer and pressed it against its abdomen, where it was instantly absorbed without a trace, leaving no bulge in the form-fitting garment. Dave let out his breath in a little hiss, and the creature, turned to look at him, out of eyes that seemed backlit with a dark circle which looked like an artificially designed pupil within sclera that glowed silver white. The man held Dave's gaze, inclining that impossibly perfect head just a fraction, hands now empty and hanging by his side. Dave looked past him again and realized that in the world outside the portico things had changed radically. There was no longer any doubt that although he himself had not moved, the ground underneath him definitely had done so, and he could see the difference as, improbably, a little island of planet Earth parted company with its world and lifted into the starlit sky. You, Dave said, snapping his gaze back into his silent companion. You're doing something. You're doing this. What are you doing? What's going on? It is necessary, said the silver man, and the voice sounded theatrically trained, as though he had practiced elocution, as though every syllable was carefully enunciated, precisely selected. I will explain. Put us back, Dave blurted, not knowing how he knew that he wanted to be put back, or where this back exactly was, knowing only that he was somewhere that he was not supposed to be, that something utterly insane was going on. Knowing with the certainty of the true science fiction geek that he prided himself as being, that gravity and atmosphere should not feel as normal as they did if what he thought was taking place was actually taking place. Knowing only that the ground underneath his feet, however solid it might look or feel, was no longer terra firma as he knew it, and feeling himself reel with that knowledge. Put us back this instant! The silver man regarded him with that curiously cocked head, then straightened it back to a more natural angle and said, softly and with something that sounded like regret, although there didn't seem to be anything about him that indicated he could feel such an emotion, I can't do that, Dave. This episode was bad! There was a line from a movie more apt to a state of mind. Dave actually froze for a moment, while still at full stretch, racing across the hotel lobby towards the stairs leading up to the tower housing the con-ops room. It was all he could do to not tangle with his own feet into a speed bump and collapse into an undignified heap right there and then. As it was, he managed to cast one look sideways at the flat-screen TV in a niche off the lobby where Galaxy Quest was currently running for a small audience of some dozen viewers. It was, however, an epic look, composed through equal parts of outrage, urgency, confusion, panic, and outright fury. If anyone had encountered it, they would have been reduced to stone by a gaze more potent than Medusa's. But those watching the movie had their backs to him, and nobody else happened to be in firing range, and Dave gathered himself and raced on. He didn't know quite what he expected Andy May to do about the situation, but somehow it was imperative that she knew about it, and know about it now, and hear about it from him rather than from some incoherently babbling con-goer who had tried to go for a walk to clear their head from the last round of drinks in the bar and ended up walking off the edge of the world. It mattered so much. It mattered so much to her. It was her first con as chair. There were things that con chairs were expected to handle, and she was fully capable of handling most all of those things, but it was blisteringly unfair. There were things that con chairs were expected to handle, and she was fully capable of handling most all of those things, but it was blisteringly unfair that on her maiden voyage, as it were, she would be expected to handle this. Whatever, Dave allowed himself to pause and append to his chaotic thoughts this actually turned to be. He had left the silver man at the front door of the hotel and raced inside with a fully formed idea of what he wanted and needed to tell Andy May. He seemed, however, to be shedding the words as he ran. The closer he got to the con nerve center where he expected to find her, the more incoherent his thoughts became, and the less certain he was that he had actually seen what he had seen. It was all he could do not to turn and run back to the door and peer outside, just to confirm, just to make sure, just to ensure that he did not sound like a raving lunatic when he burst into the room where the rest of the currently oblivious CONCOM members waited to hear the news. He made it to the control room, still in such a tearing rush that he tangled his feet into some extension cord wire running across the threshold and practically fell through the doorway. Several people looked up with varying degrees of consternation. "Hey," Libby said, "welcome back to Conland. I gather that your airport meet-and-greet mission—" "Silverman," Dave gasped. "Yes, we know. You missed him at the airport. Didn't anyone tell you he got here under his own steam?" "What?" "Silverman. Vince Silverman. Writer, guest of honor. You were supposed to pick him up at the—" "What's he got to do with this?" "With what?" "There's a silver man." "Yes?" Dave and the rest stared at one another for a long moment, and then at least 3 people said at once, "What are you talking about?" Xander pushed his chair back with deliberation, went over to the bar fridge near the sink area, opened it, took out a bottle of water, and crossed over to Dave, thrusting the water into his hand. "All right," he said. "Take a deep breath, take a drink, calm down. Everything is under control. Vince Silverman is safely—" Dave took a vicious swig of the water and then wrenched it away from his mouth, wiping his lips with the back of his free hand. I am not talking about Vince Silverman. Then start again, Xander suggested. I was just out by the... I saw... Dave's eyes wandered over to where the curtains had been drawn across the sliding door to the room's balcony. Has anybody, he asked very carefully, looked out of that window recently? Xander met Libby's eyes across the room. No, he said just as carefully. Why? Just do it, Dave said. Do it now. Okay, Xander said, taking a few slow, careful steps backwards toward the sliding door, not taking his eyes off Dave. Stop humoring me, Dave snapped. Just do it already. Xander, frowning, had now reached the door and reached out with one hand to pull the curtain open. It was another few seconds before he took his gaze off Dave and wrenched it towards the glass door. I don't see anything, he said. Exactly, said Dave. Dave, I don't see anything. That's the point. If you have to, go outside on the balcony and take a good look. No, wait, don't open that door. I don't even know if there's air. I think you need something stronger than water, somebody muttered under their breath, but still loud enough to hear. I think he's had something stronger than water, said one of the computer volunteers, crossing his arms. But by this stage, Xander was starting to wake up to the fact that there was something not quite right with the view outside, and had taken a step closer, pushing his face against the glass, cupping his hands around his eyes to cut off the glare of the room lights reflected in it. And now he suddenly sucked in his breath sharply and then let it out again in one long and somewhat unexpected syllable. Fuck. That got several of the people in the room leaping from their chairs and crowding around Xander at the door, peering outside. What? What do you see? What is it? I can't see anything. But Xander had turned away from the door, looking rather ashen, and focused back on Dave again. I think you'd better start again. What is going on out there? Dave, who had had a chance to look around the room and catch his breath, had noticed a rather important gap in the present personnel at last. Where's Andy May? She's gone to talk to Grissom, the movie star. He called up about something. She should be... As if magicked up by this, Andy May herself stepped delicately through the door, over the cable, and sidled past Dave into the room. And here I am, she said. Nice to see you finally showed up. What the hell happened out there at the airport? That was a major mess. And now there's a... What the hell is everyone looking at out there? Dave said there's a silver man, Xander said. Yes, the one he... Oh, don't start that again, Dave snapped. Look, you'd better do something and fast before you get somebody wandering out of the hotel's front door. Andy May frowned, tilting her head. And I should prevent people from leaving the hotel. Why? I mean, I don't want anyone to leave the con, particularly. I'd like everyone to stick around, thank you very much. I worked pretty hard to make sticking around an irresistible option. But if anyone leaves, they're not... You'd better come look, said one of the people at the window, turning his head around marginally. Tossing her hair with indignation, Andy May stalked across the room to her balcony door. All right, then, move. Yeah, you. Shift. Let me see. What are you looking at? Nobody answered her, and the room sank into an awkward silence while the con chair peered outside into the night. I can see precisely nothing. Have you lost your collective minds? Dave, perhaps now's a good time to explain, Xander said quietly. Dave took a deep breath. Look, he began. I just got back here. I think I got the last parking spot in the place. I freely confess I was cranky and tired and miserable, and all I wanted to do was get in there and find something to eat and quite possibly to drink. And no, to whoever said that before, I heard you. I didn't make it to the bar, thank you very much indeed. And I just stopped for a second, just outside the front door, and there was this silver man. Andy May sighed. Him again. Not the damned writer, Dave snarled. A silver man, literally. He looked almost human, almost. But then he took this thing that he was typing stuff into. It looked like an iPad or some other mini tablet or something of the sort. And he put it back into his chest. What now? Xander said. I'm telling you, there's a robot, a silver man. What, the Terminator? Andy May gasped, suddenly flushing a bright red. Schwarzenegger's here? Early? In costume? He isn't supposed to arrive until tomorrow. Why didn't someone call me? Dave closed his eyes for a moment. Not the... A Cylon? Someone asked gamely, offering an alternative to Arnold Schwarzenegger's unexpected manifestation. A Cyberman? Libby said. I think I saw one clomping around earlier. Dave, the con's theme is robots. They're bound to be no, no, and no, Dave said. It was more like data. Spiner is here too, Andy May squawked. Is Al back? With both the guys? How did he get hold of them? Where is he? Haven't seen him, Xander said, trying to keep his voice neutral. Dave, what did you see? Really? There have to be as many smartphones tablets here as there are people. This is a tech-savvy crowd. So you saw somebody typing into a tablet and you. Dave skewered him with a withering glare. All right, just shut up, all of you. Just shut up and listen. I came out of the parking lot and I stopped right there under the portico over the front drive, just outside the front door, and there was the silver man, shut up about the writer, dude, standing there by the door, typing something into what looked like a tablet, right until he stopped typing and kind of put it up against his chest and it just sank in there, blended in, whatever. I know it sounds insane. I'm not drunk. Anyway, then I felt light, lighter than I should have been anyway, and just for a moment, and then I looked out and realized that I was seeing us lifting off. Lifting off, Andy May repeated, frowning. What exactly? I know what I saw, Dave snapped, and I wasn't wrong either. I looked at the silver guy and I said something like, put us back, and, you know, he didn't say you're a moron or go home you're drunk or anything of the sort. He said, there was a pause, a longer than expected one, and Xander finally stirred. What did he say then? He said, I can't do that, Dave. There was a ripple of laughter somewhere in the back of the room, and Dave's head swung around in that direction. I think you've been watching too many. I know, okay? I know. I am well aware that this whole thing sounds not so, but look outside again. And then he said, I can explain. He actually talks, this robot? Of course he talks, Dave snapped. Well, did he? Andy May said, trying for the practical. Did he what? Explain, she said, patiently enough. I didn't stick around to listen, Dave said. I just ran off into the hotel. I thought I'd better find you, somebody, make sure that everyone knew that something strange was. What are you doing? One of the volunteers by the sliding door had unlatched the door handle and was poised to push the slider open, and Dave had instinctively flung out an arm to stop him. The volunteer froze, his hand on the latch. I just thought if we stepped out, the balcony's still there, and we could see what exactly. Another of the volunteers reached out and slapped the optimist's hand down. And what if there's literally nothing out there? Thought about that, genius? It worked fine on Doctor Who, the first volunteer defensively said. Didn't someone snatch up a hospital and slap it down on the moon, and they could still open up the windows and go out on balconies and stuff? There was a force field or something. That's science fiction, you moron! And this is... Okay, enough, Andy May yelped, silencing everyone. So where is he now, your guy, Dave? If he said he could explain, why isn't he here right now? I have no fracking idea. You think I looked out to see if he was following me? Come to think of it, I think I saw him, Andy May said, tapping her chin with a forefinger thoughtfully. Sounds like someone who vaguely matched the Silverman description, assuming we aren't talking about Vince. He was out there in the foyer before... Wait, Libby said. Wait, just wait. There was someone up here earlier in the green room, but it was chaos, and I was trying to find itineraries for the pros, and it was a zoo, but I think I saw someone who looked rather a lot like... But, maybe I'm just making things up now, because I thought it was a girl. You sure about that one? No, actually, like I just said, I think I remember seeing someone, but it might have been a girl, and damn it, we have a robot-themed convention swirling around us, and for all I know, there may be an army of them crawling around the place. It might be a new fad, or they might have heard about Brent Spiner coming, and they wanted to be data. I have to come back.